Good morning to the wonderful people of Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District and all of our friends in other parts of Maryland and across the country. I am really privileged and honored to be here today with two leading United States Department of Veterans Affairs experts to discuss the PACT Act. And PACT stands for the Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act of 2022. And I was very thrilled to work on this in the Rules Committee and to help fight for this on the floor. It's very important legislation, but it's complicated. So we decided to convene some serious experts in the world of Veterans Affairs to explain it to everybody. President Biden signed it into law in August of 2022. It expands VA healthcare and benefits for veterans who were exposed to burn pits and other toxic substances. And our guests are going to explain exactly what that was and how it happened. And the legislation provides the crucial help that our veterans deserve and need. And it was a very tough fought political battle in the Senate and in the House. And we're here today to explain what the PACT Act means for veterans in Maryland's 8th District and across Maryland and across the country. So I want to introduce first Mr. Antoine Waller, who's the director of the Baltimore Regional Office of the U.S. Veterans Benefits Administration. Also joining me today is Mr. Michael Heimel, who's the director of the Washington, D.C. VA Medical Center. I'm indebted to both of them for the great work that they do. Both of them took on their offices at a time of intense turmoil at the VA, and both of them have been roundly celebrated as leaders who have helped to break through the red tape, who've helped to bring the benefits to the veterans that they deserve, that we want them to have. And I know Mr. Heimel runs a very tight shop at the VA Medical Center in Washington, D.C., because our youngest daughter was an intern there and told me about all of the great things going on. And I've heard equally compelling things about Antoine Waller and the work he's doing in the Baltimore Regional Office. So first, I want to welcome both of you. I want to thank you for giving us this critical public tutorial. And Mr. Waller, let's start with you. Would you first start just by introducing yourself a little bit about what you do, your background, and the responsibilities of your office?
Okay, thank you very much, Congressman, and good to be here with you this morning. My name is Antoine Waller. I'm the Executive Director of the Baltimore Regional Office, National Capital Region Benefits Office. My responsibility is for the non-medical benefits delivery of the compensation, disability compensation, and veterans readiness and employment benefits. I serve over 387,000 veterans throughout the state of Maryland and surrounding counties in the jurisdiction. And that's my overall responsibility. It's been in the organization for over 30 years. Also a very proud veteran myself.
Well, thank you so much and welcome to you. And Director Heimel, I wonder if you would introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your responsibilities in office.
Certainly. Thank you, Congressman, for this opportunity to talk to our constituents as well as yours about the PACT Act. I am a 30-year veteran of the United States Army, and I was a healthcare administrator during my time in the Army and retired in 2017. And for the last 4 years, I've been the director here at the Washington, D.C. Veterans Affairs Medical Center, where we have responsibility to provide care to veterans in the District of Columbia, 5 counties in Northern Virginia, and 5 counties in Maryland. We do that by operating a academic medical center here in the District of Columbia and 6 community-based outpatient clinics across the counties in Maryland and in Northern Virginia.
Okay, terrific. Now, I wonder if also both of you guys would start with just a moment of description in layperson's terms of what the PACT Act is responding to. And you can speak either as a bureaucrat, as a government official, or as a veteran. Like, what were the toxic pits and what kinds of problems is the PACT Act responding to? Antoine, if you want to go first, that's great.
Yeah, that's fine. And I know, my good friend, Michael will go in more detail, but I would say from a benefits delivery standpoint, all veterans that have served, one of the most significant things about the legislation is that it covers a generation of veterans from Vietnam era to the Gulf War era veterans, as well as post 9/11. And those that have served during those periods have suffered either diseases or disabling conditions as a result of being exposed to toxic environments. In medical terms, certainly won't get too far into it, but I would say that the new legislation really opens up in a broad perspective. A lot of veterans now have an opportunity to be service connected in a very honorable way for those services for the disease or conditions that have been suffered throughout their military service.
Gotcha. And so, Mike, if you want to add anything to that about the problem being addressed, but also, what are the changes that will ensue under the new legislation for the health care that veterans are able to get?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think what's different about the PACT Act is it really takes a comprehensive approach to addressing what we refer to as military environmental exposures. In the past, it's been one type of exposure that's gotten a lot of highlights, whether it be Agent Orange or burn pits. But the PACT Act really addresses a range of military environmental exposures to include things like noise exposure or exposure to chemicals and things you may use in the military work environment if you're working in a motor pool or around engines and those types of things. And that's probably a significant piece of what the legislation does. I think the other really significant piece of it is it opens up, as Antoine said, a group of veterans for VA benefits to include healthcare in the VA that previously did not have access to those services and benefits. And just, within our market, it could be up to 53,000 additional veterans that would come and seek care from us, though we don't expect the number to be that high. That's about the number that became eligible on 1 October, if we want to take a really comprehensive look at the expansion of healthcare services.
So if I'm getting you guys right, if there were a classic battlefield injury, if somebody was shot in their arm or lost use of their legs, then they would have been covered before, but then there was ambiguity around people who suffered toxic exposures. And this tries to deal with it comprehensively, which is why you're saying that there could be tens of thousands of people, our veterans, who are now covered for toxic-based injuries they may have suffered while in the service.
Yes, one of the significant changes, if I can add here, is that in the past, veterans had to go through a lot to show that their military service had a direct correlation or link to the disabling conditions that they currently are suffering, either through a cancer or disease. And with the PACT Act, that essentially is a burden that is removed from the veteran. If you have served honorably during the period of service during those war eras, and you served that honorably, and you have that presumptive conditions, and we're adding about 20 new presumptive conditions under this PACT Act, then we are essentially presuming and connecting that service time with your condition. So it certainly gives you a very positive outcome of having a service-connected disability.
All right, that's really helpful. Now, I understand, Antoine, you and Mike have put together a slideshow to help us understand in more detail who might be covered and how they can get the benefits and the healthcare under this. And please take it away here.
All right, I'll go ahead and start out. If you can go ahead and advance the slide. As we started out the conversation this morning, this is a very significant, comprehensive act. We're so excited about the opportunity to serve veterans in a very special way and their families that have experienced these disabling conditions. So the PACT Act certainly will expand the health care as well as the benefits to all veterans that were exposed, like I mentioned before, generationally over 3 periods of service, your Vietnam era, Gulf War, and post 9/11. And I'll add just a note here that one of the more positive experience veterans can expect is that VA will process their claims, we believe, in a much faster way of getting outcomes. In the past, it used to take a series of months in order to get a decision. We believe with the new presumptives that's being added to under this PACT Act, we'll certainly look to have a quicker decision-making process. The use of technology as it relates to the analytics. So we'll do some artificial intelligence in our decision-making process. This is really going to make us serve the veterans and their family in a much more expedited way.
Yeah, and Congressman, on this slide, I'd like to highlight the third bullet about every veteran receiving an initial toxic exposure screen. The Veterans Health Administration went live yesterday with a toxic exposure screening tool that is part of the veteran's medical record. It doesn't require any blood tests or diagnostic imaging. It can be done during a primary care appointment with your primary care provider, or you can walk into the medical center, and we have a couple of navigators who are assigned to be able to take veterans through this toxic exposure screen.
Is that a blood test?
No, it's not. It's just a conversation with a provider about what your military environmental exposures may have been and what types of health conditions that you have and concerns that you have, so that we can begin documenting in the medical record a relationship between your exposure, your time of service, and your medical conditions. And it can be a very simple screen if you have no medical conditions, but you have exposures. And then as the years go by, if you begin to have medical conditions that are related to those exposures, we've already started that documentation process.
Okay, go to the next slide. Here, I'd just like to add, because of the magnitude of this legislation, we have already begun building our skilled strength in our workforce. We're hiring thousands of new employees to bring into our organizations that is going to be prepared to deliver on our promises to ensure that every veteran and their family is cared for under this new act. So we continue to do training and continue to make sure that we're ready to implement the legislation. Here will be on January 1st of 2023.
And I'd also like to highlight that of those 31 new medical facilities that were authorized in the PACT Act, 2 of them are going to be built in Maryland. It includes our new Prince George's County community-based outpatient clinic, which will replace the one that we currently have in Camp Springs. Plus it includes one for the Baltimore VA Medical Center up in Glen Burnie. And Congressman, I just want to thank you and the entire Maryland delegation for your support of those 2 clinics.
I appreciate that, Mike. We fought hard for that, and this is going to be a meaningful intervention in the lives of our veterans, and especially with the PACT Act, those who've suffered exposure to toxic substances.
Here we just want to illustrate that we anticipate hundreds of thousands of new claims being filed as a result of the PACT Act. We understand that this legislation is going to impact many veterans and their families, and those that have been previously denied under these certain presumptive conditions in the past will have an opportunity to resubmit a supplemental claim in order to be served as well. But we're going to take priority preference to those conditions that are cancer related. That's important to know as we begin that implementation period as well.
Antoine, thank you for emphasizing that. One, if your condition is cancer or precancerous, get in there quickly. They're going to put emphasis and priority on that. But also, so much of the power of this legislation is in the presumption. Instead of, this being a program where we've seen so many times before where the presumption is that you're not covered and you've got to prove the negative that you would not have had this except for your service. Now the presumption is if you have one of dozens of different conditions that it was caused by your service. And so, in other words, the system is not set up against the veteran. It's set up to assume that the veteran should be a healthy person and the conditions that they've got are as a result of their service if it's in relationship to toxic exposure.
That is a great point. And again, I just want to, just echo the importance of as we move forward. In the past, the veteran had a burden that was extremely difficult and harsh for VA to receive favorably. But under the PACT Act, because they have now a presumed condition that is under this new legislation, they no longer have to prove that. And it makes it that much less ease of burden on them in order to have their claim processed favorably. All they have to do is show that they had favorable, honorable service during that period of time, and their current diagnosis supports the current legislation with the presumptives that we've offered.
And I think the other important piece of that is on the healthcare side, we're not waiting for VBA to adjudicate a claim to get a veteran who has a medical condition related to an environmental exposure. We want to get them into care and get them treated as fast as we can. There's obviously a lot of research that needs to go on into a lot of these exposures. The Veterans Benefits Administration has their job to do, but we want to make sure that first and foremost, we're getting veterans into the care that they need.
Awesome.
Okay. Here, just want to show that as of January 10th, we introduced 20 new conditions under the presumptive for service connection due to exposure to toxic environment. Won't go through them all, but just know that if you have currently any of these current diagnoses, please, 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 we encourage you to apply now, immediately, through our va.gov PACT Act.
Antoine, I've got no problem if you want to read through them or at least pick out the key ones. I mean, there's some very big conditions here.
Well, the one that we have seen that's coming to our system is the ones related to asthma diagnosed, after service. There are times when those conditions won't appear until years later. So certainly it's important to understand that the onset of that condition may not be at the time you're served. So that is one that we feel that is important, but also we've in the previous legislations have already opened ourselves up to processing claims under rhinitis, sinusitis as well under the current Agent Orange diagnosis.
Yeah, I'm just going to read a few of the other ones. I mean, the chronic bronchitis, the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, emphysema, gastrointestinal cancer of any type. That would include colon cancer, head cancer, high blood pressure, interstitial lung disease, kidney cancer, lymphatic cancer, melanoma, pancreatic, pleuritis, pulmonary fibrosis. I'm about to pass out just reading through these, but I mean, these are the kinds of things our veterans have suffered from, and it's a very comprehensive list, and we fought hard for this. I mean, I want people to understand this is a serious new benefit that they have, and they should go in and not assume that they're going to be put on trial like they've got to prove it. The assumption is if you were in service and you were exposed, and you've got a condition like this, there will be health treatment for you. There will be benefits. Please continue.
Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that. I know you talked earlier about the military environmental exposure. That is just important to understand that, it's just not a cancer disease. If you're exposed to any sort of sound or vibration as well, those come under the terms of military environmental exposure.
Yeah, and Antoine, thanks. I think it's a very important term because it's what makes this act so comprehensive. Rather than just focusing on one particular type of exposure like Agent Orange or a burn pit, it really looks at all of the environmental exposures that service members have dealt with over their many years of service.
Great. Well, look, can I ask you a few final questions? Are you finished, Antoine? Or are you still working through it?
No, that's fine. I think there's a few more slides. We could certainly go through them very quickly. I know
good.
Mike has a few there to cover on the eligibility side.
Right. So as I mentioned earlier, on the 1st of October, a very large group of veterans became eligible for VA healthcare and can enroll for services now by coming into the medical center or visiting the VA website and enrolling. And the next couple of slides give you a list of different separation dates and theaters of conflict that you may have served in, and when your eligibility begins. But for the post 9/11 combat veterans who separated or discharged between September 11th of 2001 and October 1st of 2013, they became eligible to start receiving VA healthcare on the 1st of October of this year.
Is it just for people who were exposed to relevant conditions in battle, or would it also be, theoretically different kinds of testing or other sorts of exposures?
The eligibility begins, and I think we cover it on a couple of the slides that are coming up, depending on what theater you may have served in during your military service. So if you were in Iraq or Afghanistan, even if you were in Bosnia and a number of other areas.
Gotcha.
So, and this, clearly states for the post 9/11 combat veterans, if you served in a theater of combat operations or in combat against a hostile force after November 11th of 1998, and you were discharged between September of 2001, October of 2013, you can enroll for care now. So, and we can go to the next slide. And then there's a phasing in based on other separation dates. And the VA does have the ability, by publishing notice in the Federal Register, to actually accelerate these timelines. And most importantly, where folks can get additional information about the PACT Act and about what their eligibility may be for healthcare and for other benefits.
And I like just to add there that, again, this is a generational legislation that has impact many veterans throughout our years of service. And it also supports our survivors with death benefits as well. So I encourage all to apply, act now, and apply at the website that is listed there.
Antoine, can you give us an illustration of survivors who might be eligible for benefits under the new statute?
Right. You may have had in years past been denied because your spouse had passed due to a service related illness or disease that was not presumed to be connected to their era of service. But now under the PACT Act, because that condition under the different cancers or disease are now presumed to be service connected, you can reapply for benefits, and we'll go back and adjudicate that claim accordingly to make sure that every family member is being supported by this new law.
I mean, this will come as an extraordinary relief or comfort, perhaps, to a number of families who have lost a family member to one of the conditions we were talking about before, some kind of chronic respiratory condition, for example. And if before there was no presumption that it was connected to their combat service, although it was clear to them and to their families that it was, but now because of this congressional enactment, it will be presumed the survivors can go in and to apply for benefits under the statute. It obviously doesn't bring back their loved one, but at least it's a recognition of what the family went through. Am I getting that right, Antoine?
That is absolutely correct. Could not have explained it better than that. Thank you.
All right, great. Are we at the end of the?
Yes,
For
sir.
the most part,
Antoine and I were going to say the same thing, but I think the most important thing for folks who view this session is do take a look at these last 4 slides, because it's got some great information on where you can get more information on the PACT Act, how you should file your claim for benefits, and who you can contact for more information.
That's great, Mike. Thank you for urging people to act now. Don't wait another minute if you think you're covered by the program. I hope this is not going to be one of those numbers or websites that we saw in the past, Mike, where you call all day and the line is busy all day, or nobody calls you back. I mean, I hope that we're really going to jump to respond to people. Do you have any sense of how that's working?
So far, I think it's worked very well. I know here at the Washington, D.C. VA Medical Center, just with veterans going onto the VA website and expressing an interest in getting a exam for and on one of the registries for exposure, we've had over 3,700 veterans who've expressed that interest, and we have made outreach attempts either by telephone or by sending letters to every one of those 3,700 veterans so that we can get them in and start their screening process.
Well, that's fantastic. And I know you're all about the outreach and the accessibility and the transparency. So thank you for that. And if there's anything else we can do in Congress to get you the resources that you need to make sure that we're reaching out to people, please let us know.
Now, here, and we can go ahead and advance as well, but here is just illustrating that you can go to our website. You can also contact us directly at our office here in Baltimore. You can go online and connect through us either with virtual appointments or in-person appointments as well. We've already seen over 140,000 claims being filed already. We've processed over 40 of those claims that are associated with previous presumptions that we've already had cleared through legislation. So again, now is the time to act. You can certainly submit a claim on a VA form 21526 easy form to get started.
All right, terrific. Good. So everybody get these, the websites, everybody get the phone numbers. let's see, I had a couple more questions I wanted to ask you. So if a person is not sure whether they're covered or not, what should they do?
They should file a claim immediately. Again, very simple first steps is to submit your claim with the VA form 526EZ. You can also connect with an experienced veteran service organization as well, like a VFW or American Legion, Disabled American Veterans as well. They have an understanding of the requirements that VA will apply to the delivery of benefits, and that's another assistance that is offered for veterans to submit their claims.
Well, look, Antoine Waller and Michael Heimel, I want to thank you for your continuing work on behalf of our veterans and your aggressive outreach on this program. I hope that this conversation and the great slideshow you put together will help to educate even more, thousands more veterans in our area in Maryland and the surrounding jurisdictions, but also across the country, because anybody can watch this. We want to get the word out so people understand this is a government program that is not set up to discourage and frustrate and keep people out. It is a government program that is set up in order to bring people in so they get the healthcare and the benefits that they deserve based on their honorable service to the country, and the various trials and tribulations and travails they experienced in the course of their service. So look, thank you both for your time this morning. Thank you for your service. Thanks for explaining the benefits of this landmark legislation, which we're very proud of. And I am, of course, most grateful to our veterans, including you guys, and for the work that you are doing every day to serve our veterans. So thanks to you all, and everybody, please go ahead and pursue the healthcare that you need and the benefits that you deserve.